Hi, folks. Sorry I couldn't be there today in person, but I thought I would walk you through how I um, reviewed and improved my music task. So, to start with, I've been using, I think it's pronounced Maya, the Michigan Arts Assessment Tools, for a while. And I really like their work, but most of their items are set up as assessments that are a little bit more event-based versus classroom learning embedded tasks. So I knew that I would have to make adaptations, but I really like the thinking that they have behind all of their assessments. So I found this one. It's a fifth grade music assessment, and there's a teacher and a student version. So I started by looking through the teacher version, and saw that the standards, while they do use the National Core Art Standards, I knew that I would have to think about making sure that our standards are aligned. So I would have to look at the California Music Standards. So as I was going through the criteria, I realized that the alignment, I would have to ensure that my final version was aligned to our California music standards. And then I started thinking about some of the information and looking through what the basis of this task is. So it's basically students have been learning about musical concepts like vocabulary around pitch, tempo, rhythm, and they should have some experience within their ELA and history social science classes already with compare and contrast. And so within this task, basically, the foundation of the task is a piece of music, and then they engage with another piece of art and compare the two. And so they should be similar either thematically in some way or from the same period of time. And so that's how I started out looking at this task. Um, there's a rubric that I think is a good foundation for the item as well. And then going through as well, there are tools for students to use so they can use this version of the compare and contrast that helps them identify some of the things that are alike as well as different, or the standard Venn diagram format. The samples that they gave, there's two that are about basically transportation. And then this is some jazz music that is aligned with the Kandinsky improvisation painting. And then going through their additional examples that you could pull from as well. So then I took a look at the student version of the task. Very similar, but obviously some of the items were taken out. And so they do have the scoring rubric, so they know what the expectations are. They have the two tools to choose from. They do have directions that talk about playing the music and then a topic from another subject area so that they know they'll be asked to compare and contrast, and they should see those different items there. And then the fact that they have choice as to which of the two compare and contrast charts they can use. And then again, they have the transportation-based selection as the main one, or the impressions. So I went through this process, and obviously I started with the alignment, ensuring that whatever I looked at, I had to look at the fifth grade music standards and make sure that I adapted this task in a way that actually aligned to the standards, included the correct vocabulary. It's definitely authentic in the way that they're taking one type of art and comparing it to another kind. They're finding connections, whether thematically or basically the way that the music makes them feel, in the same way that viewing art or reading a poem might make them feel. And so they have to apply their understanding of music as well as being very creative. It's somewhat active in that they are making a good amount of decisions within it. They are art is highly personal, and so they're talking about the things that they feel they notice within the music, as well as what they feel and notice within the selected piece of art as well. And I thought about how they could extend this to make it a little bit more active, to think about how they might share their thinking, because it would be good, I think, as a next step to either have them share out in pairs, share out as a class. It could be a good extension, and it also could help inform other students to see how people interpret the same works of art so differently. With Rich with Multiple Approaches, I thought if students all, assuming they have headphones and their own device, you could give them a selection of which pairing they would prefer to write more about. And so that gives them more options. And then an extension, and this is not easy after having done it myself, but creating their own pairing of music and some other form of art. For the transparent expectations, I thought that the rubric was pretty clear, but I don't love giving students the different levels. I think it's really helpful for them to have an idea of what that level 4 is. And so it could be more clear, I thought, if it was written as success criteria, and maybe a discussion of what those specific words like thoroughly and thoughtfully actually mean. Equitable, all of the examples given were men. So there was not a single female artist. While there was diversity within the male artists selected, there were no female artists. And then removing barriers, I thought, I didn't see why we couldn't include a word bank, especially looking at the fifth grade standards. And then maybe adding things like audio versions of the poems, because again, are we assessing whether or not they can read the poem or whether they can understand its meaning? And then also Spanish versions, if they are able to be found. So after all of that deliberation, here is my final version. Let's see how this works. So I worked a little bit backwards and identified the aligned standards, and made sure that it would work across. So these are the fifth grade standards. And then from here, I wanted to make sure that the specific vocabulary was pulled over as well. And then I also found some adaptations and accommodations. So there was the poems being read, as well as one of the poems was originally written in Spanish. And so what I did is I went through, I included just a brief introduction. I added success criteria and the word bank. I created a pairing that involved female artists, and then I thought about also including some images of the artists, as well as the period during which they lived, to give them a little bit more context, and to maybe see societally and historically how, for example, with one of the jazz-based one, the Impressions, that these two men were very different, lived, while they overlap slightly, lived during different time periods, but still their forms of art evoked similar feelings. And then included the same compare and contrast charts. So I tried to find some ways to make it more accessible, more adaptable. I didn't include extension because I didn't know if that would be something that would be truly part of this task, but it seems like something that could be done as a next step within this task process. So that is how I got to where I am with my thinking around this music task.